I'm just making
It
it up.
should
But
be. It should
it
be a
should.
word.
I'm really happy to be here today with Orna Ross from the Alliance of Independent Authors. Thanks for joining us, Orna.
I'm delighted to be here, Tara. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, we just had a brief kind of like, you're Irish, I'm Irish too, which was really great. So it's nice to have like fellow Irish people in the independent publishing world, although neither of us are in Ireland. But anyways, let's get this thing kicked off because we had a lot of questions. So if you have questions throughout the chat, I'll be keeping an eye on the comments and we'll try and get them as they intertwine in what we're talking about. But if not, we'll put some time at the end where we can try and cover things. So Orna, you are a novelist, a poet, and the director of the Alliance of Independent Authors. So you're kind of, you wear many hats. It was founded in 2012, and I was curious sort of what made you want to create this alliance?
Yeah, well, it very much grew out of the fact that I am an author and poet myself. So I've been working in media and publishing for more years than I'm going to admit to. And I had reached a stage where I was kind of having differences with my publisher. I had got a great 2-book deal for a novel, which really thrilled me when I got it. But when I got into the world of big corporate publishing, I found the lack of sort of creative input, if you like, to be kind of disheartening. I'm talking about in the publishing side. Obviously, you get
Right.
really loads of creative input on the writing side, but so I tried self-publishing myself very much as I'm not going to like this. It's not for me, but I'll try. Everybody was talking about it. I'll give it a go. As soon as I did it, I thought, oh my word, this is huge. This changes everything for authors. It just all hit me. And I looked for an association to join, and there wasn't one. Well, there were a few kind of smaller groups, but nothing doing what I thought was the most important things that an association for independent authors should do. So it just happened that my husband and I were in this hiatus in our lives. We had moved country. I had been ill and he had moved from his work, and we just had this big chat. Will we do this kind of thing? So together, he's the business side, and I brought the writing and publishing side. And so together we decided to do it, and there we were. And we expected it to be this tiny little thing that would be kind of on the side of my writing life, and it hasn't worked out that way, but it's been fantastic.
I feel like that's the wonderful story about everything with independent publishing, that everyone maybe thought it was tiny, but it has become this huge beast, which I love. One of the features that I think is really great with Ali is the reference to kind of you rate the different services, because it can be really intimidating for an author to Google self-publishing, and Ali has a great list of like, here's ones that we have vetted and worked with that are really good, and here's ones that you should be maybe a bit weary of. So I think that's pretty valuable.
Yes.
I'm curious, has your vision for Ali... Oh, sorry.
No, you're fine. I think we're on the same page there. Sorry, carry on.
Oh, I was just going to say, has your vision changed at all in the last 8 years as self-publishing has so kind of quickly changed what it's kind of been focusing on, from rather than getting one book, it's like entire businesses, and what the Alliance of Independent Authors has kind of done as that's grown?
Yeah. It hasn't changed, which is kind of the interesting thing. So we started with, you're talking about the kind of predator and less than effective services. We started with this mission of excellence in self-publishing and ethics. That was our kind of core mission. And I saw from the start that as soon as you publish a book, you have now entered into the world of business. And I saw immediately that was going to be quite a stretch psychologically and emotionally in other ways for authors, because that was the experience I was having myself. So, while we saw it at the beginning, I think those implications are only really beginning to be understood and felt now, but the essential infrastructure and how we approach things and how we set up and the services that we offer and all of that, none of that has actually changed. The details have changed, but the actual underlying foundational stuff hasn't changed at all. And I don't think it ever will, because I think these fundamentals were there for people who were publishing 100 years ago. They're there for corporate publisher. They're there for the person who wants to publish just one book, but they're particularly there for the independent author who wants to actually make a living from what they're doing. And it is that difference between, the author used to define as an artist, and maybe still does. And in the 20th century, it was very much about being a professional, so you had a CV and it was a career, and you worked through the universities maybe, and the reviews and the newspapers and magazines and journals and things like that. It was a profession, but now it's a business and a profession. A company and a career, they operate very differently. And I think that's where we tried to step in, and particularly, we're now running particular campaigns around that very issue.
Nice. It is a kind of a wonderful merging, and I guess often challenging merging of creative with business. And, those are two different parts of your brain. So it's great to have some sort of resource that authors can go to and help with this. You wrote this really wonderful article for the Kobo Writing Life blog, so thank you. And Rich Murray has given it a shout out there as well, where you're talking about self-publishing 3.0. So can you talk us through these different iterations from the 1.0, 2.0, and where we are right now?
Yeah, so 1.0 was actually back in the 1990s, and we don't talk about it very often now, but it was super. I was around. It was super revolutionary at the time. So up to then, in order to publish books commercially, for profit, you had to have a huge, big printing press, which was beyond the investment potential of most writers. But then we got desktop publishing, which led to print on demand, which meant that we could actually publish off just as many copies as we needed and not have a huge, big consignment print, 2,000 or 3,000 books in the attic or the garage moldering while we had no distribution outlet for them. So desktop publishing was huge. And that was self-publishing 1.0, if you like. And all the way then through, people were looking at the potential of digital publishing. You had Sony Reader and various other things that were happening along, but it was really in 2007, 2008, with the launch of Amazon online store, the Kindle Reader, and the KDP Select, that whole thing. And then very quickly, Kobo Writing Live and Google Play, Apple Books, and so many others have gone on. That is self-publishing 2.0. Gives us the ability to write and publish, reach readers all over the world, the ebook essentially, and the digital audiobook. So now authors can actually publish in 3 formats without major expense. And we saw authors just jump to this in great number, first in North America, and then slowly it's kind of gone out around the rest of the world. But I think maybe that not a lot of authors realize the full implications of it. We were doing it and enjoying it, but not understanding this kind of business implication, which has, I think, slowly and steadily over the last 10 years, it's over 10 years now, 12 years, has been growing. And with it, author confidence has been growing, and a whole change in the attitude, which before, when you had to have a publisher to reach your readers, it was kind of publish me, please, and it was a very unequal power dynamic. Yeah. Whereas now, I think with confidence growing in the community, and with this awareness that, oh, we're in business, oh, we own our own rights, oh, we can, those rights can be broken up like different rental properties in a big building. It's not a matter of, here's all my rights, publish me, please, take all my rights, do what you like with them, just get me out there. It's, I can actually do this with my audiobook, that with my ebook, something else with my print book. If I am doing something with print, I could, and the publisher is interested, I could say, well, you can have my print rights, but I'm going to keep the ebook rights, or I would give print rights in, say, North America, but not world rights, which have become the habit in publishing, to kind of take all rights. So I think as that has dawned on authors, and as we have realized that creative business isn't business as usual, doesn't mean you turn into a corporate monster, where profit is all you care
I mean, you
about.
can if you want.
Sorry.
You can if you want, you know, if
Well,
that's
you
your
can if you want, but
no.
you probably won't, because you're
Yeah.
also fired by this passion thing. And
Yeah.
it's that balancing of the profit and the passion, and bringing both of those to all the aspects. So I think a lot of authors begin with, I love writing. I hate this marketing thing. I don't want to do this business stuff. And then the ones that are more successful realize actually creative marketing is just as much fun as creative writing. And in fact, it is very often creative writing, because, social media, even ads, these are ways in which we amplify our passion and our mission, and, get our message across to our readers. So that's self-publishing 3.0. It's authors building businesses that are fired by 4 different engines, if you like. One is direct selling from their own websites. The second one is going wide, publishing in as many formats as possible, to as many platforms as possible, including, obviously, one's own website. The third is the selective rights licensing, which means you don't give everything over exclusively to anyone, that you're very strategic in how you manage the wonderful privilege of owning your own rights. And then the fourth one, and I think this is the one we're really seeing now, is author collaboration, whereby authors are actually helping other authors to find readers, and doing some of the things that traditional publisher might have done, but in a very different sort of way. So they're collaborating in writing, so that they're able to produce more books, because once you get into author business, you realize that's key to making enough profit to keep going, to have lots of books going, and to keep the production up. But they're also collaborating in marketing and sales. So, swapping newsletter lists, and all sorts of very innovative and interesting things. So yeah, it's really exciting. And I think it really represents a switch in that power dynamic, where the creator, it can be the leader. So traditionally, the author was the very last person to get paid. Everybody, the shop and the wholesaler and the distributor and the publisher and the agent, everybody got paid. Then eventually the author got, quite a small percentage. We're looking at turning that all around, so that the author is actually the first person to get paid. And yeah, it's exciting.
Yeah, I love that idea of collaboration. That's definitely something that we're seeing on the rise in promotions on Kobo through Kobo Writing Life. We do these promotions once a month that kind of came to us as an author idea, where we were brought a bunch of authors that all published in the same genre, and they were like, can we do like a big promotion and sale with these authors? And like, we know that the readers all like them, and they were like, oh, it was just tremendously successful. So it's something that we do regularly to kind of just give the readers more options. And I love the level of support that indie writers have to one another, that they do really want to collaborate. I also, I enjoy that you kind of, defined it as self-publishing 3.0, because I think that's quite important to distinguish between the difference. It's very funny to me how self-publishing came from a pivot away from the traditional business, but now with the 3.0, people are getting so savvy that they're really, and may not realize that they're doing this, but like learning the key functions of publishing in general. Like you were saying about having your rights in different areas, or being very strategic with what you're selling. Maybe your audiobook for a certain region isn't something that you need to handle yourself. So I think that's really interesting that it's sort of come around, not full circle, because I think publishing has kind of changed, but the power that indies have now is like really exciting.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting what you're saying, because I think at the beginning, and still a lot of people hold this, that it's self-publishing on the one side, trade publishing on the other, and it's a binary kind of choice. And we still get authors saying, oh, which publishing pathway am I going to take? Will I self-publish or will I trade publish? It's not like that. It really is that self-publishing has blown it all open, and you've got loads of choices, and you've got, hopefully you're going to have lots of different books. So we also always say, well, actually, you don't have that choice until you have an offer. It's for many of us, that won't be a choice that you're going to get, because, the number of places are shrinking and the number of authors producing books is growing. So, that binary choice isn't a good way to be thinking about it. And that's the big thing about self-publishing 3.0. There's a whole kind of mindset and a whole psychological positioning that you have to kind of wrap your head around before it makes sense. And when it does make sense, we see it happening with our members again and again. That's when things really begin to take off for people.
Nice. And so let's say we're speaking to an author that's trying to get started in this mindset and look at their self-publishing career as a business. What would be some sort of beginning advice that you would offer?
Well, I think the first thing would be to focus on your website. So again, we will still hear people say things like, I'm not going to bother with an author website. I'm better off on social media. If I use my Facebook page or whatever to set up shop there. So we would strongly recommend that every author makes their own website the hub of their author business, and that their aim on that website is to get email addresses from readers who are interested in what they do. And that they also, as indie authors, it's fine for a traditionally published author to have a brochure site, which is just kind of, here's a list of my books and there's where you go to buy them. But indie authors should have a transactional website, so that if a reader lands on their site, then they can purchase a book there if that's what they want. We recommend that authors would have a page for each book, and then they would have on the purchase page all the options that the reader might want. So if readers like to buy on Kobo, you've got the Kobo link there and all the other stores that you are interested in including, but put your own store in there too, because obviously if they come directly to you, that's best for your business. And the other platforms are your partners, and you work together with them. And if the reader prefers to buy there, fantastic, you make that possible, but don't forget yourself. Don't undervalue yourself. And I suppose that's the biggest thing I would say, in the whole psychological, emotional end of it. There is a tendency among authors, particularly at the beginning, to overvalue the work emotionally and undervalue it commercially. And we would be advising people to turn that around, and to try as much as you can. Look, it's not easy, but actually it gets easier the more you write and the more you kind of throw yourself in there. And then the other thing that you simply can't succeed without doing is understanding who's your reader. Who is the particular reader who likes the particular kind of books you write? So again, when people are starting off and you ask them, who's the book for, the usual answer is kind of, well, everybody would be kind of interested in this, or I wasn't thinking about any particular group of people, whoever wants to buy it, the more the merrier, those kinds of answers. And in actual fact, that is not the best way to think about it. The optimal way to think about it is to go really, really, really narrow as you can, in fact, and build out from there, rather than opening the doors to everybody, because you'll actually end up speaking to nobody probably.
Nice. I like that you're saying about the landing page. That's definitely something about having the links. We try to hammer that in as much as possible. It's such a simple thing that people might forget, but if your books are on Kobo, you got to tell your readers your books are on Kobo. So I think that's really important. And the whole idea of looking at this through a psychological lens is super interesting as well. Rich had a question there about non-English markets, and many of them never had global publishers. So the audience may not be as savvy in tech. And that sort of leads into my next question that I had for you, Orna. The inevitable exclusive versus wide publishing debate that is ongoing. I would say that, when you're publishing wide, you are definitely reaching those areas in the global space. that are newly emerging digital readers. Europe is very fastly growing. Everyone's not quite ahead as North America, but there's definitely regions that are just beginning this digital revolution. So we had a couple of questions in advance about, what would tactics be? I guess I want to get your opinion on exclusive versus wide in general, and then questions about marketing tactics for somebody that is newly going wide and trying to get their footing.
Yeah. So, there is no question as far as I'm concerned, as far as Ally is concerned, it's wide, wide, wide. It doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense to limit yourself to one platform. And particularly, there's just from a business perspective, which again I think is where we came in back in 2012. Just limiting yourself to one outlet is not something that you would do. That you can use exclusive deals with somebody as a strategic thing within a pattern of going wide. Yes, that can make sense. But definitely, in order to reach as widely as you can, you need to be on as many platforms as you can, and also in as many formats as you can be in. So ebook is generally the best place to start because that's cheapest, but keep some money and reinvest it. Get into print, also print on demand, and get into audio also as soon as you can afford to do so. The more ways you have your books, you have to forget about how you like to read yourself, come out of your own local and national bubble and see with a much wider lens that, as countries take off, if you are in there early, you are getting an advantage that many people say in North America got at the beginning of this because they were ahead of the posse. They are now still, some of those authors are still at the top of the bestseller list. They've kept their advantage all the way through. So yeah, and in terms of going wide and how you do that, I think one of the reasons that maybe people go exclusive at the beginning is because they find it all a bit overwhelming, and it is. There's sort of 7 stages to the publishing process, and the first bit is just making the book, getting the book together. At the beginning, all those decisions are huge and they take a lot of time, and it's a lot of effort and a lot of choice, and it can definitely be confusing and overwhelming at the beginning. By the time you're on book 2, it's easier. By the time you're on book 3, you're not even thinking about that sort of stuff. Now you're thinking about who's my right reader and selling and promoting the book. How do I kind of get it out there? So the thing I would say to anybody who's listening, who's maybe feeling, oh God, I can't cope with the idea of wide, I have all these outlets, and what will I do? I'll have to upload my book all over the place, and they're all different, and I don't know how to market it anyway, and all that kind of stuff. I would just say, take it easy, deep breath. An author business is something that is set up over quite a span of time. You don't have to invest a lot of money to become an author as businesses go. Actually, how setting up it is remarkably cheap, even though some authors don't think so. But really, it's the cost of good editing and design at the beginning, and then you're learning, but you are putting in a huge amount of your own time. And obviously, to write the book up front, you have to put in a lot of your time, but you also have to put in a lot of time to learn how to be a good publisher. That takes time. On observation, I would say it takes 2 years between kind of starting off and then finding your place, knowing who your right reader is. So take your time. With going wide in terms of what's going to work, honestly, it's such a multi-layered and varied landscape that what's going to work for you is possibly, what worked for me is possibly not going to work for you, and all around the track. It's very individual. The only way to know what works for you is to experiment and give it a go. Give it a try. There are lots of, read the blogs and the advice that you get, from blogs like Kobo, all the trusted sources. There are loads of them out there. Joanna Penn, Dave Cochran, Dawson, there's just fantastic free advice. Use it, try it, give it a go. Of course, our own, I forgot to say, the Self-Publishing Advice Centre, selfpublishingadvice.org. We're all there, helping each other to do things. Talk to other authors, particularly authors in your own genre. other authors who have gone wide. Ask them, and the first thing they'll tell you is going wide is different. You don't apply the same sort of marketing techniques as you do if you're going exclusive. You have to, again, there's a psychological journey you have to take where you have to begin to understand the level of choice and how you cope with it. There are aggregators who will handle the distribution stuff for you if you don't want to upload to lots of different outlets, though we do recommend uploading to the big five, as we call them, directly if you can. So, if you go directly to Kobo Writing Life, there are all sorts of things that become available to you that are not available if you're going through one of the aggregators like Draft Digital or Publish Drive. So we would recommend go directly to the big five, and then after that you would use an aggregator to reach all those lots and lots of small stores around the world that perhaps Kobo doesn't have a presence in, and that's the thing to realize. No platform is everywhere. And it is about combining lots of different things. So it isn't as scary as it sounds. I think that's the main thing I want to say. And you learn it by doing. Don't think about it. Just leap in, do something, see how it goes, explore, experiment. And from the result, you'll know better what to do next.
That's wonderful advice. Something I would say as well is, like you're saying, to reach out to similar authors. Don't be afraid to reach out to the retailers as well. If you're beginning to go wide, give us an email. We have a lot of good advice about what you can do to sort of have a presence on Kobo. And our ethos is really for you to try and get your books in front of as many readers, however they want to read them. So as Orna said, for you to be getting on as many platforms as possible. And there was, Rosanna had a question about like rebranding a book and launching them as a series for like a non-traditional series that she mentioned, our women's fiction set in India. And what I would say is I hope you're taking advantage of something that we give to authors that do come direct to us is our promotions tool, where we often have, not often, on a weekly basis, lots and lots of different promotions. So some of them are discounted 40% off, which can be really helpful when you're wide because you don't have to worry about price matching. Some of them are different price points. We have featured spots and pages. So if you don't have this promotion tab, make sure you email the team at writinglife@kobo.com or leave a comment and we'll get back to you and make sure that we have it for you, because that's just something that people might not be aware of.
Yeah, and they're fantastic. Kobo promotions.
Yeah. Thank you. Francine asked you if you could list the big five. And I just have to say, I love that the big five is not publishers anymore. It's now like players. Who are your big five?
Well, Amazon, Apple, Kobo, Google, and Ingram Spark for print.
Okay. Awesome.
We consider those to be sort of the indispensables. We're really kind of growing and taking books really wide. And when you overlap all of those, you really are hitting 95% of the world as well, because they have a different presence in different places. So you still go with the aggregator then to get into that final 5%. I will say that distribution is actually amazing for independent authors, and we can sometimes, really take that for granted. I mean, I love the Kobo map, for example, that shows you all the different places. Yeah, everyone loves the Kobo map. And I was looking at mine this morning, and it was Taiwan and Mauritius, and
wow.
Seeing that people had kind of bought books in these exotic places, it really is just so amazing. So, I forget, I've lost the train of thought, but you get the picture. Yeah.
Yeah, that's okay. So there's a couple of questions come through about marketing, and so one, sort of, what do you think about using BookBub with marketing? And then another question about like a universal marketing rule that would hit things globally, or should we be kind of specifying our different marketing per geo? I guess it's different depending on the books, but do you have an overall thought on that?
Yeah, I'll take the BookBub one first because that's easier. BookBub's a great service. Really make a difference to a book, and particularly good for people who are going wide, I think, in that it really can up the needle on a book, and that's a BookBub featured deal. So talking to Carolyn actually from BookBub recently about that, and of course they're introducing. She was saying the main thing about that is to keep on trying. And we had a member recently actually who had got her BookBub feature deal after 15 attempts. So keep on, do persevere. Yeah, it's interesting. So and that was Carolyn's message too, is if you don't get it at first, don't be disheartened. They only have so many slots, keep on trying, kind of thing. But they have lots of other different tools as well. They have an ads platform now as well, and lots of different ways. So you don't just have to rely on the featured deal. So yeah, BookBub is definitely a good service. There are lots of others. There are lots of and BookBub is not cheap. It delivers a good return on investment, which is a different thing. But that initial investment may be beyond your reach at a particular point in time. There are lots of other good promotional outlets as well. And as Tara said, don't neglect to speak directly to the retailers who really do want it. It's in their interest. All of these of the big five that I mentioned, they only do well when you do well. They don't make money unless you make money, and so it is, it's a partnership. And don't be afraid of them, and everybody is extremely friendly. So don't set up a red line for yourself that you're afraid to cross. Just reach out to people by email, and you'll be amazed at the amount of support and the good tips you'll get, because there's a huge amount of information going through the community all the time, and things change. So it's very easy for something that's really key and important for you to actually get lost somewhere in the information stream. So do reach out with your own particular situation, your own particular genre, and ask for help. You will get help if you ask for it. In terms of setting up and trying to market geographically, I would say begin with global English, because that's definitely the easiest thing to do. And a lot of these distribution services, you don't need to think too much about a particular place until such time as you begin to get a sense of where are the books moving, where what's happening where. So use some of the promotional tools and see what's happening. So again, it's this whole thing of learning by doing. And then if you see that there is a particular movement in a particular territory, and especially if it is disproportional to the population. So obviously US is always high because there's a lot of people there. Ireland is small because there's not very many people there, but you might be selling.
And we're not even there at the moment.
We're not even there. Ireland's not small, it's just all over the place. Yeah, plenty of Irish people around, but they're just not at home. But anyway, that's a whole other story, which read my novel. But anyway, yeah, so the thing is to look and see what you're doing well and build on that is the standard rule. So if you find that you're kind of beginning to take off somewhere, then follow in on that and then maybe do some specific promotion in that particular area.
Yeah, I think that's really great. I love the idea of thinking about globally per language, that we sometimes have like translations or something that be quite successful. And we have some authors that are based from America that are selling more in France than they are in Canada, which is just amazing. But then something to keep in mind is like when you're setting your pricing, that you want to set your euro pricing, but you also want to set your like Swiss franc pricing. So when you're setting an English book, you want to look at and see like where are there a lot of English speakers, and make sure that you're setting the pricing so it's like as attractive as possible. As consumers, we're kind of preconditioned to respond well to a 99-cent end price point. So that would just be something that I would advise. Yeah. And then I wanted to talk a little bit about audiobooks. So Kobo developed a direct audiobook upload last year, which we were super excited about. Margaret has just commented that she's starting the audio route. So whenever your book is ready, you can publish it directly with us. Do you have any advice on the marketing process being different, or do you just what works for ebooks works for audio?
No, I don't think it's necessarily a correlation. I mean, obviously, if you've got some sort of profile. So the other thing that I didn't really mention at the beginning when talking about what's essential is this whole concept of the author platform. And, not to get too hung up on that at the beginning, but essentially the author platform is what gives you visibility. And gives readers a sense of what your books are about and so on. So as you sell ebooks, you're developing your platform. So more people now know you're an author. More people now know what kind of books you read. You know, you've legitimized yourself as you sell. You see that people do like the book and so on. But every format is different, and there are different readers. There are people who only listen now. They don't read, they only listen. And there are people who only read in print. They don't want to do ebook, and vice versa. So as Tara was saying earlier, giving the reader what they want in the format that they want it is the way to be thinking. An audiobook is a big investment, and very often that's the kind of the third format. But we're seeing more of our members, and particularly those who are doing well in ebook, it's kind of ebook, audio, then print, or even simultaneous release is happening. So, but I think audio is promoted slightly differently to ebooks. I think, you know, it is voice, and I think to promote audiobooks, it's a good idea to promote using your voice, or using the podcasting or some other kind of, so the voice matches the voice, if you know what I'm trying to say. So I think that's the big difference, because you're essentially looking for people who like to listen, and so the marketing should take that into account.
Nice. Do you have anything to say about whether indie publishing differs per region, or do you think, like, is North American, what the indie publishers are doing there, different from what you're doing based in like the UK and Ireland? Do you guys have some secrets that you want to share with us that are here in North America?
I don't think there are secrets, actually. I think publishing is profoundly simple. I think the essential principles I'm talking about, not the hacks and the tricks and, you know, and those which change all the time anyway. And, you know, one that works for me may not work for somebody else. Those kind of foundational principles that will always apply, you know, as I said, applied 100 years ago, will apply 100 years hence. They don't change, and we all need to be thinking about those. And the thing about those is, of course, we get really excited if we get a tip or a hack or something that kind of gives us a boost at a time, but it will only ever be a boost. It's like the tide goes in and then it goes back out again. But the steady growth, you know, week on week, month on month, year on year, that's what you're really aiming for. And there'll be little hollows and spikes, but you want your graph to be kind of going up. And that's a long-term endeavor, and that's built over time with a lot of your own personal effort, drawing in your readers. So the fundamentals just don't change. That email list, you know, you want to get your readers on your email list, because they kind of belong to you at some level. Then you've got a direct line of communication. They've given you access to their email inbox. I mean, it's a really huge privilege, and one that can really make a difference to your career. So, you know, that fundamental was there as soon as email came into being, and it still is there. And until they find something that replaces email, it's the one you need to go for. And you will hear people saying, oh, email's over and nobody opens it, and, you know, Google kind of puts you in the naughty step anyway, so it's not worth your while. But that's not true. It is still the most effective way to reach your readers. So, you know, I think it's the main message to get across is this is going to take time. Take your time and have fun each step of the way. Then you're most likely, if you're enjoying it, it's likely that your readers are going to enjoy what you're putting out there.
Yeah, I guess that comes back to the self-publishing idea, like self-publishing 3.0 being something that an author wants to set as a long-term career. This isn't something that you're sort of doing as a hobby or dipping your toe in. Like, if this is something you want to be able to set yourself up on the career path. Sweet. So I wanted to ask, you know, it's hard to avoid talking about the pandemic that's sort of hitting us at the moment. Have you noticed any trends since or changes? I know at Kobo we have noticed a lot more people reading digitally. I just wanted to see if there was anything on your end that you've noticed.
That's also something that we have noticed, and so that one of the things that kind of instantly, you know, was very forcibly noticed was the fact that the people who were relying on print and the people who were set up already for ebook and audiobook sales, there was just such a gulf of difference in how this pandemic affected them, and that was there immediately, and that has just continued because our authors who are well set up are all doing very well. You know, if they have books available in digital, ads are cheaper, readers are reading more, and readers are online more, so it's easier to actually, you know, get their attention on social media. And you know, traditionally kind of minority genre like poetry and the deeper sort of books are being read in greater number as well. And
Nice.
people are looking for consolation and anything that kind of makes them feel better about the world, and, you know, switch off the negative stuff and escape a little bit. So all of those kinds of genre are doing well also. So it's actually, for anybody who's involved in digital publishing right now, we're one of the very few businesses, and certainly one of the very few creative businesses, that is actually doing better out of the pandemic than anything else.
Yeah, I feel kind of grateful that we're able to still give people stories. I love the idea of the soul searching that's going on with people. That's really interesting. At Kobo, we sort of, when it began 11 years ago now, we celebrated our 10th anniversary last year. There was always the concept of this being a 25-year digital revolution, to getting people to adapt to digital reading. And I think print readers will always exist. People will delve in different forms, but this has definitely accelerated some of the pace of the people that are reading digitally. And that's kind of exciting, that, you know, especially working with authors, that to be able to tell an author directly that, you know, you are impacting somebody's life and letting them have some escapism from what can kind of be a sad time sometimes. So I do appreciate working in this field in that regard.
Absolutely. And I think for authors, you know, some of our members, especially at the beginning, not so much now, but still a few saying, oh, you know, this is so serious and so difficult for people and so challenging in so many different ways. You know, does writing a story really matter? And, you know, finding it hard to kind of connect with how much. But of course, it's the opposite. It really, really does matter. And this is the time for those of us who want to tell stories to step up. And even if you haven't published before, this is a very good time, maybe when you're locked away and can't do a whole lot else. I know lockdown is beginning to ease in a lot of places, but, you know, we're going to be relatively locked down for a lot of time. And those of us who write a lot, we're saying, well, lockdown doesn't look all that different from my usual life when I'm writing a book. You know, it's that kind of intensity, and you need those big chunks of time indoors with no distraction, just getting on with the work kind of thing. So it's actually a very good time if you have been contemplating writing and publishing a book now. Definitely is. The world's come around to support you in that intention, so go for it.
Yeah, I did think that when we went to working from home and talking to authors, and they're like, how are you doing? And they were all just like, it's the same. Like, okay, with the added stress.
I know, we're so sad.
No, like you guys are pros. You're just way ahead of us for this. So do you have any advice for to just keep an author motivated, like even without pandemic, you know, there's nothing scarier than a blank page sometimes. So what helps you stay motivated as a writer?
I've got 3 kind of core practices, and of course, me being me, I push them on everybody I see. So I use a particular form of meditation, but I think any form of meditation is, you know, if you're trying to write and you don't meditate, you're actually leaving out something that can be incredibly useful for you in all sorts of ways, both from kind of obviously the calming thing, and but removing distractions, getting you out of the surface level of mind down into, you know, where the creative stuff comes from is so important. And meditation is a proven technique that you just watch the brain and watch a meditating brain and just see all those creative centers light up. It's that simple. So every author should meditate, I think. I also am a big promoter of what I call free writing. It's a form of free writing, writing fast, raw, exact and easy, FREE. But essentially it's about just letting the pen move and lead the way for a certain period of time each day, or when you get stuck or when you don't feel like doing real writing. Doing that, it's writing by hand in a notebook, and it really does you kind of you start off writing about stuff, and by the time you're finished, you're ready to kind of go and pick up the pen. And then the other thing that sorry?
I was just going to say that's very Kerouacian, sort of the collective unconscious of just like, as Capote said, it's typing, not writing, but I like it as a exercise to just get you in the zone.
That's exactly it. I mean, it's used a lot now in academic settings as a pre-writing technique, because rather than going straight into writing the hard stuff, you start off. It's like a warm-up for an athlete, and that's certainly one way you can use it. There are loads of ways you can use it. I mean, there's also Julia Cameron's idea of where you get, in the morning before you get out of bed, you just write 3 pages. 100 years ago, Dorothea Brand was talking about the importance of doing this. Just, it's siphoning off all the crap so that you can get at the good stuff, And the other thing that I think is really, really important is exercise, moving the body. We're stuck in front of our laptop or our notebook or whatever. We're sitting a lot. We might have a standing desk or whatever, but getting moving, again, you can see that aerobic exercise sets off the sorts of brain waves that cultivate. That's why we have our best ideas when we're actually on the move somewhere rather than when we're sitting at our desks. So consciously getting out and exercising, and not team sports, the kind of exercise that sees you on your own, just with your thoughts and moving. So I think those 3 things, if you can manage to do them regularly, it really helps. And then connecting with the author community, talking about your difficulties, maybe getting together and having an accountability group. I run an actual just closed Facebook group where we every Monday morning set our intentions for the week, and then every Friday we hop back in and say what actually happened. And very often there's absolutely no relation between what goes down on Monday and what goes down on Friday, but it does show that you are moving and you're doing something, even if it wasn't quite what you intended to do. And I think the important thing as indie authors is that those intentions are set not just for writing productivity, so many words or whatever, but that they're also set. I talk about the author as maker, but also as manager. So your process, having an intention for something at the managerial level that you'll do each week as well. And also as marketeer, what are you actually going to do this week to shift a few books, so you need to be balancing those 3 hats and have actual intentions each week for those things. And then getting an author friend to hold you accountable, whether it's in a group or one-to-one or whatever, really does make a difference to your motivation.
Yeah, I love the idea of having just the marketing stuff, including the writing, because with an accountability group, it could be easy to just think it's like, okay, I'm going to write 5,000 words this week. But I do like the idea. You're like, okay, I'm going to do marketing for this book, going to proof this ad, like, enter this promotion and do that work. That's awesome. And also the movement. Do you ever go into like dictation or anything? We know some authors that some authors type on a treadmill, some dictate while they're hiking, and that's their writing focus. So I think there's definitely something linking creativity with the movement there. Do you dictate at all, or has that not been your... No?
Totally. Oh no, completely. I couldn't do what I do without dictation. I dictate everything.
Okay. I thought you said no. I was like,
no, everything. I literally couldn't do what I do without it. Email, everything is. Sometimes there's writing that can't be done in dictation, but you can always get down the bones of the idea. You can always, it gives you something, to start with, because my hardest thing, and as you said, for a lot of people, the hardest thing is that blank page. And if you stay there too long with it, it wins. So you got to get something down and start playing around with it. And dictation is brilliant for that because it takes the angst away. You just talk it in. And our phones have such fantastic dictation services now.
Is there anything in particular that you use that you could advise? That
yes, I use Dragon. I think
Dragon?
it's really fantastic. And Dragon Anywhere, which means it syncs across all your devices. It's a bit of an investment, but for me, it's worth every penny. But as I said, the talk function on your phone now is really great. And just open a notes, Evernote, or whatever notes system you use, and just get something. Talk it in, see how it goes. It takes a little bit of getting used to, especially for fiction. But I mean, I've even written poems through dictation. So
Oh, really? How do you
yeah.
do with the punctuation and
Oh, you have to go back in and edit always.
evidence,
All
everything?
of this, it's all it is giving you your first rough draft.
I see.
You have to go back in, but with dictation, and it's the same with fiction. It won't be perfect, but you can get a huge amount of words down pretty quickly, and then you go back in and you edit. Then
I joked about because we do NaNoWriMo at KWL every year, which is the National Novel Writing Month, where you write 50,000 words in the month of November. And I wanted to dictate, and I was told that I would be cheating. So I'm now going to say that I am not going to be cheating. So maybe I'll dictate in November, and it'll be my way of winning Nano.
You dictate, girl. That's not cheating. You get words any way you can in this business.
All right. So we have a few minutes left. I'm just going to scroll through and see if there's any questions that we didn't cover. So there's one from Lena that asks if we can talk about the difference between marketing fiction and nonfiction.
Yes. There are differences but yeah. So nonfiction depends very much on keywords and on being found when a person searches for that issue. So always when we're writing a book, we're solving a reader's problem, whether we know that or they know that or not, but they've got some kind of problem they want. And that's true for fiction as well. It's obvious with nonfiction. So with nonfiction, you go to the source of that problem, you begin to think about how they would search for answers to that problem on a digital search, and then you make sure that your book surfaces nice and high, preferably number one in that search as the answer to their question. So marketing nonfiction is quite search-based, traffic-based, all of that, and then the usual sort of taking it to the right readers, joining the communities and so on, where that like those kinds of books. Yeah. That's an overlap with fiction, as you do that for fiction as well. You find those readers who like those books that you like, but it's a much more nebulous endeavor. It's harder because it's not a simple answer to a simple question. Fiction, it's a complex answer to a complex question. And so it's more challenging in that way. And so you've got to decide with fiction, what is it you're actually marketing? What is the value that you're bringing to people? So you will, obviously there will be the whole thing of your genre, whichever genre you find yourself in, knowing what that is, and not just your genre, but coming down into sub-genre and down again into niche. So what is the key signifier about your fiction that makes it stand out? And that might be something to do, at the very literary end of fiction. It might be something to do with how you write, your whole writing style. It could be the setting of your books. It could be, the theme, the moral of the story. Whatever it is, it needs to be something that connects with the reader at the heart and soul level. So genre doesn't do that. That genre is just a bookseller's category, which makes sure you're kind of in the right place. But you have to go beyond that and think about that connection. And then when you're writing to those readers, you're gathering them in. Hopefully, you're putting out a message then that will attract them. So you put out a story or whatever that really hits I hear writers saying, "Oh, I'm going to use my leftover short story as my reader magnet." No. Your very best shot, please. What's very also representational of what they can expect if they do sign up and do keep going. So marketing fiction, again, takes time. It's about you getting to know what your value is, and that can much easier to answer that question for nonfiction than for fiction. But the thing about fiction readers is they're incredibly loyal. So when they do like what you do, they want to know everything about you. And then it becomes easy because you can, you know, talk about behind the books, your inspiration. They cannot get enough. I'm like that myself. As soon as I finish a novel that I love, I want to know everything. I want to know where they grew up and, you know, what was the inspiration for this and everything I can find out about that writer. So getting each fiction reader is harder won, but they're very loyal, whereas non-fiction readers can kind of suck up your book and kind of they're gone off to read a completely different book about a completely different topic.
Yeah. I guess that comes back to having a really good author platform for your fiction books, making sure that readers can find what they want to know about you. You have a pretty nice looking booth there. So do you narrate your own nonfiction books? If we're thinking about audiobooks?
Yes.
Different sort of readership, right? That we find that audio at the moment is a lot more of a nonfiction listener, but like fiction is definitely creeping up. But when it's a book that you're doing yourself, it sort of lends you to your own narration. So sorry, I cut you off there. So, but you do narrate your own.
Fine. You're fine. We've a slight delay on the line, so I think we keep slightly interrupting each other. I would never do my own fiction, not in a million years. I started off trying to do my nonfiction, and I found it just too time consuming. It's a whole other skill, and it's kind of a skill I didn't fully have. So what I do narrate is my poetry. So I do all my poetry books and I like that, but I'm going to leave the narration to the professionals.
That's fair enough. Yeah, I know. I think people think that it's really easy, but in essence, you're performing. So you have to have some sort of actor gene within you to be able to do it, even though you know this story inside out. You haven't read it aloud, probably, unless you're dictating everything. So perhaps you have.
No, that's absolutely right. It is the actor thing, and lots of authors have that, but lots do not. And lots of authors are not. Only do your own narration if you think you're the best person to do it. Would be my thoughts on it.
Yeah. So where can people try and learn, where can they learn more about the Alliance of Independent Authors or find out more about you and what you're doing? Is there a space so that our viewers can go to?
Yes, indeed. So the Alliance can be found at allianceindependentauthors.org. So that's all one word and no of. So allianceindependentauthors.org. We also run a self-publishing advice centre, which has the ratings of good and bad services that Tara was talking about, our podcast, our blog and everything. And you'll find that at selfpublishingadvice.org. And my own work you'll find at ornaross.com.
Wonderful. Well, thanks so much for joining me, Orna. This was really beneficial, and I appreciate it. I feel like we covered everything from self-publishing 1 to 3, which is like everything
in between.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Actually, I did have one last question. Now that we talk about that, is there anything that you wish that you knew back in self-publishing 1.0 that you know now, or that you were told as an author publisher?
Yeah, I think the thing that I think I would love to have been told is how you've got to kind of, I'm a multi-genre author, as I said, but I think this applies to every author, but it particularly applies to those of us who write across completely different genre, is that you have to have if it's 3, you've got to have 3 different marketing strategies, possibly ideally 3 different publishing names, and you've got to think about each of those in having its own particular platform. So at the beginning I mushed everything all up together, and I'm really only kind of separating all that back out again now. So that's the one thing I wish I had known. Everything went in there, self-publishing and fiction and poetry, and of course they're very different readers for each of those different genres.
Yeah. So that's really great advice, even with like building a newsletter, making it the distinguish between the audience. Like, I think that's a wonderful note of advice to end on, I believe.
Okay, right. Good, great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again.
Yeah, thank you, and thanks for everyone for the great questions. And if there's anything that you didn't that we didn't cover, you can email writinglife@kobo.com and we'll get back to you. So thanks again, Orna, and thanks everyone for watching.
Bye-bye.